2016, it was later found out that these Harvard scientists were paid off to basically brush sugar under the rug and say that fat was the reason that heart disease was on a rise. When in fact, when they were actually researching this, it was sugar. They found that sugar was the culprit, but they were paid off by these big food corporations that had a ton of money. And they basically said, hey, can you say fat is bad instead of sugar? And they were like, yeah, we could do that.
You're listening to the Clean Kitchen Podcast with Kyle and Kevin Fitzgerald.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Clean Kitchen Podcast. We talked about it a little bit last week, but we're really seeing a shift from vegetable oils to beef tallow, or just really vegetable oils to a lot healthier oils like olive oil, avocado oil, things like that, like Steak and Shake, like we just talked about. They're going to be cooking their fries in beef tallow very, very soon. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today, right, Kevin?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how it fits into the broader category of fast food. Kyle, do you ever eat at a fast food restaurant, like if you're traveling or something?
I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I've had fast food in the past couple years.
Sure.
So yes, I mean, I have done it a few times, and it normally is when I'm traveling, and it normally is like either in an airport or, for example, I was at a wedding a couple of years ago, and it was at the beach in North Carolina, and there were like no restaurants at all whatsoever, except for a McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
So what did I do? I got some beef patties. I think I got like 4 beef patties, and I had like a bunch of bananas that I had brought with me. So, does it happen? Yes. Does it happen often? No.
Yeah, in a pinch, especially on the road. Sometimes there just isn't an option. You have to get what's near you, and something like a McDonald's is almost always there. So it's going to be an option. So it's good to know what you can get there. And we're going to talk a little bit about some other fast food chains. If you do need to stop somewhere, where should you be stopping? What should you be ordering from these fast food restaurants? But before we get into that, we got to start with the history of fast food. This was fascinating to me. I did not know this story, but why did these fast food chains become so popular? So our story begins just after World War I. So at this point, a lot of troops have come back home. They're ready to really take advantage of the new economy that we've created. The U.S. government has now created a lot of money on the backs of worlds. Unfortunately, on the back of war. Unfortunately, that is a truth that exists in our world. And so we have this new kind of middle class that gets created on the back of World War I. And this middle class has disposable income for the first time. And what they want to do with this disposable income is eat out. It's a form of entertainment. Instead of eating every meal at home, they go and they decide to start eating out at restaurants. And because of that, restaurants become very, very popular in the 1930s and 40s. In tandem with that, the government is actually building out the infrastructure behind roads. So long time ago, not really roads that exist in order to get from point A to point B. You were either getting there on horseback, or you just weren't traveling. Like, people didn't just travel. The idea of traveling for fun did not exist before. You traveled for necessity. This travel for fun is a relatively new phenomenon. And people are starting to travel more and more because cars are also becoming more popular. It's like this trifecta here. People have disposable income, cars are cheaper, more affordable, and roads actually exist. And as a result of all of these things, fast food chains start to pop up. Because as you're traveling, you want something that you know that's reliable. And you see those golden arches down the road, you know exactly what you're getting there. And so this becomes just a staple of the American economy at this point in time. McDonald's originated in 1940. The first fast food restaurant was actually White Castle in 1921. That's where it all began. So it's over 100 years ago now. And you just see this growth continue over the next 10, 20, 30 years. More and more fast food chains popping up, getting more and more popular, and people just becoming accustomed to this life.
And you mentioned it, but like the consistency, like you go to any McDonald's and you know you're going to get the same exact thing, whether you're in Florida or Washington, across the entire country, you're going to get the same thing.
Exactly. Especially if you have kids too, and you're traveling with them, and you know that you need to have something that's going to make them happy, something that you know they're going to like. McDonald's. It's easy. Yeah. I know that it makes them happy. They get a Happy Meals toy. It was just easy at that point.
Yeah. And I think we're going to talk about this, but it seems like the ingredients that a lot of these fast food companies use in the beginning were a lot better than what they're currently using, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think we mentioned it very briefly on the last episode, but McDonald's actually used to fry their French fries in
Yeah.
beef tallow.
Yeah,
Obviously, that is not the case anymore.
yeah, it was like up until 1990s, I think, right?
1990 was when they officially removed beef tallow.
So
But if you go back to the 1940s when McDonald's originated, it was simply potatoes, beef tallow, salt. It was a 3-ingredient recipe to make their French fries, and they went crazy. I watched a ton of videos about this, about people talking about the French fries at McDonald's in the beginnings, and people were obsessed with these things.
because they were
McDonald's
so
French,
good.
they were so good
Yeah.
because it had like this beefy flavor to the French
Yeah.
fries that from the beef tallow that people just loved. And people have tried to recreate the original recipe over the years. It's kind of funny to see it because it is so simple. But you gotta get the right mix of everything there. I think someone called it the bliss point, where it's this perfect combination of sweet and savory that you're looking for with these McDonald's French fries. So they've got these fries, they're loving them. Two things happen. The first is McDonald's is founded by these two brothers, the McDonald's brothers, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're just like restaurant owners. They're not businessmen. I think they were friars originally. They just knew how to make good food. And so Ray Kroc, who most people associate with McDonald's in the very beginning, sees the explosion that's happening here in the beginning. And he's like, I want in on this. And so he makes a deal to buy a large part of the McDonald's franchisees. And as a businessman, his ideas are efficiency and scale. He wants to make these franchises exist everywhere, and he wants to make all of them have more affordable price points. And so he comes in, and that's when he starts tinkering with the recipe a little bit. He'll add in other ingredients, emulsifiers, so that they travel easier. He'll like make them, fry them, freeze them, and then try and refry them again once they get to the restaurant. And over time, they become they lose some of the lore over the years because Ray Kroc is kind of changing up the recipe. But what the real impact is in the 1980s, which is when they start getting pressure from an individual to remove the beef tallow, the frying in beef tallow, and replace it with seed oils. And that is the second point here that I want to bring up. And so that is where we introduce our second main character in the McDonald's story. So Ray Kroc was the first, and Phil Solocrov is the second. And so this another businessman, and he makes all his money in real estate, has nothing to do with health, nutrition, food, nothing. But he has a heart attack at the age of 44. And at this point, he is flabbergasted. He's an otherwise healthy man. He exercises all the time, eats okay, not great, but he eats okay. And so he's so confused why he would have a heart attack at the age of 44. And as a result, he talks to his doctor, really understands it. And his doctor tells him that it's because of his high cholesterol, which was caused by high consumption of fat, specifically saturated fat. That's the key here. Kyle's going to break this down for us in a second, why that matters. But what you need to know about Phil is that he takes on this crusade, and he goes after any and all restaurants that are using saturated fat in their ingredients. And because he's this powerful businessman, he has a lot of money, and he creates something called the National Heart Savers Association. It's not around anymore. It's probably why you've never heard of it. But the National Heart Savers Association creates all these ads, smear campaigns against saturated fat, how it's bad for you, how it has an increased risk of heart attacks. And people are scared. They don't know exactly what to believe, but they're seeing this nonprofit create this material. They're like, it must be true. And so McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, they all get this pressure from their consumers, from their customers, that they need to ditch the saturated fat. They need to swap out beef tallow. And in 1990, enough is enough. And McDonald's finally makes the decision to remove beef tallow from its recipes. So they had slowly removed a lot of, or I guess increased the number of ingredients over the years. But in 1990 is the nail in the coffin, remove the beef tallow. And today's French fries at McDonald's have 19 different ingredients, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah. All right. There's a few things I want to hit on there. One, you mentioned that people liked that beef flavor in the French fries. And it's funny you say that because nowadays, if you look at the ingredients in McDonald's French fries, like you said, 19 ingredients?
19
in their fries? they add natural flavor, specifically natural beef flavor in there. And I kind of wondered why they did that. And now it makes more sense. They wanted to basically duplicate that flavor of the beef tallow, but instead they took the shortcut, which is adding natural flavors, aka a bunch of synthetic chemicals, to get that beef flavor. That's super interesting.
Yes, you're exactly right. That was a part of the research. People still wanted that beef flavor, and so this is how they did it.
Huh?
Yeah.
Wait. So did other fast food restaurants also cook in beef tallow, like Wendy's, Burger King?
They did. So it was actually cheaper to use beef tallow back then than it was to use seed oils because it was so prevalent. Yeah. And so almost all fast food chains were utilizing at least some beef tallow, maybe not 100%, but they were using that with a combo of some sort of seed oils. So it was a mix and match, but over time, it just became cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to utilize seed oils, mass production, and more expensive to utilize beef tallow. And then on top of that, there was this attack of saturated fats.
Yeah. So from my knowledge, there's basically two specific events or studies that happened that basically convinced the American people that saturated fat is bad. Mm-hmm. One of them is the Ancel Keys study, which we'll dive into a little bit more. And then there was a specific study out of Harvard finding that saturated fat is bad. Fat is bad, and that it increased our risk for cardiovascular disease. But I'm curious, so what year did you say that this whole thing went down where this individual had a heart attack?
Yeah, this was in the 1980s that this happened.
1980. So the Ancel Keys study and the Harvard study, that was before.
Yeah, the Ancel Keys study started, I think, in 1957 is when it started, but 1950s for sure. Okay.
And for those that aren't familiar with the Ancel Keys study, he's a big reason why saturated fat has been deemed so unhealthy for us, and why vegetable oils have been considered quote unquote healthy for us. And it's what Ancel Keys did was he basically looked at a bunch of different countries and found that the countries with the lowest consumption of animal protein, specifically animal protein that's high in fat, he found that those specific countries had the lowest amount of heart disease or cardiovascular disease. But what the study doesn't show is that he basically cherry picked that data. He looked at a bunch of different countries, but he only chose the 7 specifically that basically fit the narrative that he was trying to prove. The fact that fat is bad, specifically saturated fat, and the more you eat fat, the more heart disease you're going to have. It was later found out that he, like I said, basically cherry picked that data with these 7 specific countries. And am I missing anything there? I feel like that's kind of like the high level overview of this study and why so many people think, or the beginning of why so many people thought saturated fat is bad for us.
Yeah, there's so much of our food guidelines that are based on this study, which is crazy because it is completely flawed from the very beginning. This is a perfect example of correlation, not causation. So it's like Levi, my son, has been alive for 1 year. Every time he's been alive, the commander—
1 year?
1 year. Well, he's existed for obviously less than a year, but one football season. Yeah. Every time he's been alive, the Commanders have made it to the NFC playoff. Like, correlation, not causation. That's what Ancel Keys did. He said, "Oh, this is the outcome that I want. Let me back into the research that will help get me there." So a perfect example of this is one of the 7 countries that he chose was Greece. He went to Greece, he studied them, the people there, the men and the women, and then watched what they ate and observed how many, over time, heart issues they had. And it just so happened that he went to Greece during Lent, a time when, especially in the Greek Orthodox Church, people do not eat meat at all, no animal meat. So he's like, oh, they're not eating any meat at all. And so that must be good because they don't have a lot of heart issues. Turns out, outside of those 40 days of Lent, they're eating a ton of meat.
So it sounds like there were a lot of flaws in this study.
A lot of flaws.
This is just another one to be mindful of. And it's since then been kind of disproved that this study was a little bit rigged and like I said, cherry picked. So that seems like that was one of the main turning points from saturated fat, from things like beef tallow to these highly processed, refined, chemical-filled seed oils. And the other big study was this Harvard study. And basically these Harvard researchers, these Harvard scientists, they were trying to determine this, the root cause for heart disease, because heart disease was on this rise, cardiovascular problems and heart attacks. And they were looking at sugar and fat. I guess they kind of narrowed it down to those two things as possible causes of this increase in heart disease. And it wasn't until, I believe, 2016 or 2016. Was it 2016?
Yeah, I think it was 2016.
2016. It was later found out that these Harvard scientists were paid off to basically brush sugar under the rug and say that fat was the reason that heart disease was on a rise. When in fact, when they were actually researching this, it was sugar. They found that sugar was the culprit, but they were paid off by, who were they paid off by? Do you know?
I think it was just big sugar companies.
Just big sugar, these big food corporations that had a ton of money. And they basically said, hey, can you say fat is bad instead of sugar? And they were like, yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
And that was in the 1990s.
Yeah. I think that was the 90s, that one.
And then it didn't come out till more recently that they were paid off. And again, like our food guidelines, a lot of our food guidelines were based off of that one study.
Yes.
So specifically the 7-country study and this Harvard study, a lot of our nutrition guidelines were based off of those two studies, and they were rigged, basically.
Yes, they're flawed from their beginning.
Flawed.
And
that's a better word.
Yeah. I saw another one. I think it was the National Institute of Health, the NIH, conducted a study, and it was a similar type of effort where they were trying to determine the main cause of heart issues. And this one was done in the 80s, and the result didn't come out till 20 years later. And it actually just proved that there was this correlation between the consumption of saturated fat and heart issues. And later on, a journalist asked the researcher, why didn't you publish this immediately? Like, why did this take so long to come out? And the researcher says, oh, we didn't get the answer that we were looking for. And so it just gives you this lens. It seems almost made up or fake, but these stories, they're in nationally regulated public health journals. Like they're out there to read. It is just the story's been so tainted. I think my favorite quote from this research, it says, "The science is not unknown. It has just been silenced." And this is so powerful because anyone thinks, I was talking to one of our friends' parents the other day, and they were like, why do you eat so much beef? Like, isn't that bad for you? People have been so convinced that it is over the years because of these types of studies and headlines. Even in pop culture, people try to discuss avoiding red meat because it's bad for you. And so it's these studies have been so powerful at being marketing gimmicks for really these polyunsaturated fats, which we'll talk about in a second, and against the saturated fat that we've been eating for thousands of years. But let me ask you this, Kyle. Why is it that I should not fear saturated fat then?
Yeah, well, let me take out my handy dandy notebook here because I wrote down some notes about this because I figured you would ask. I figured you would ask this question. So first of all, I want to kind of like go off of that a little bit because you got to be careful with studies because just like you said, people they'll think about the conclusion that they want, the findings that they want from the research, and then like you said, like they'll back into it. They'll be like, okay, so how can we get this to be our conclusion? So that you got to be careful with a lot of studies, and it's something that people always comment and message me all the time when I say any of the claims I make, like artificial colors are unhealthy or seed oils are unhealthy, like all these different things. And people are like, show me the exact study that shows this, which I love. I enjoy that people want to see the research that shows this, but like sometimes you got to be careful with studies because I can find one study that says seed oils are absolutely terrible for us. And I can find another study that says seed oils are so healthy and they're great for our heart. So you just got to be careful of the studies you're looking at, and specifically who's funding the studies. Look at who is providing the money for these studies before you just read the headline or the summary and be like, okay, that's my conclusion. So that's just a caveat there.
Yeah.
But in terms of beef tallow, you even mentioned it. We've been consuming beef tallow for centuries, and the prevalence of heart disease and cardiovascular disease, it really hasn't got to the point where we are today, except for since the last 40, 50 years. Like that's when it's really rose so much and become very prevalent in our society. So the first thing I'd say is, if you look back to how long we've been using saturated fat, there was very little to no heart disease. It wasn't until a lot of these added chemicals, and yes, seed oils was a big part of it, but also just different preservatives, emulsifiers, and just all these additive ingredients. So the first thing I would say, we've been using it for so long. The second thing is that, like you said, beef tallow is a saturated fat. Saturated fat means that it's very stable and can be heated to high temperatures and stay stable, basically. And what that means is, even better, I'll give you an example. So polyunsaturated fats, which is the type of fat that you find in seed oils, when you heat these oils up, the fats basically become very toxic right away because they're not stable. These polyunsaturated fats are not stable at all. So when you heat them up, they become very toxic and rancid. And when we consume them, our cells in turn then become almost toxic and they don't function properly. But these saturated fats that are found in beef tallow, they're very stable. So they can be heated to very high temperatures and they don't degrade, they don't oxidize, they're stable. So those are two things. Third thing is, these saturated fats like beef tallow, and even things like coconut oil, for example, that's also a saturated fat that is very healthy in my opinion. But specifically beef tallow, it's very high in fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K. And this is the same thing with like meat too. If you look at the pure nutrient density of meat, the vitamins and minerals that are found in meat, it is way more nutrient dense than really any other food out there. Like any fruit or vegetable, you're going to find way more vitamins and minerals in meat. But because it's high in saturated fat, it's been scrutinized. It's been under this microscope of, oh no, it's high in saturated fat, so it's bad. Mm-hmm. So meat and beef tallow, very similar things. Another property that's found in beef tallow is something called stearic acid, which actually has been shown to have a positive impact on our cholesterol levels. So it's actually been shown to lower our cholesterol, and as opposed to increase our cholesterol, which we can get into a little bit more of that. But saturated fat as well is also very, very crucial for our brain function, and basically our just overall cell health and the integrity of our cell membranes. I mentioned earlier that that polyunsaturated fat, it oxidizes easily, and when it gets into our cells, that can cause problems, and that can actually cause our cell membranes to break down and basically not function properly. Mm-hmm. But beef tallow does the exact opposite. It's actually very good for our cell membranes, so our cells do function properly. And the last thing I'll say is just look at it from an outside perspective. How do you create beef tallow? It's just the fat from beef. That's it. Mm-hmm. Take beef, you're cooking a steak, cook the steak, and there's a bunch of fat, looks like oil in the pan left over. That is beef tallow. That is beef fat. And there's nothing that had to be done to basically create that. It's just you heat it up a little bit and then you get the beef fat. Whereas you take these vegetable oils, for example, they go through so many different steps to go from a sunflower seed or a canola plant into canola oil or sunflower oil. So high level, just look at how these things are made, and you'll quickly realize that beef tallow is not the culprit. It's all of these other additives. It's these seed oils. It's all of these other new ingredients like artificial colors. I was just at the store this morning making a video about Red 3 being banned recently. But yeah, I just feel like I rambled on for a while there. How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I think that's important because it's two sides of it. It's saturated fats are actually good for you, and polyunsaturated fats should be avoided. I think it's important to note that like both things exist, and it's not even just like avoid polyunsaturated fats like seed oils, but actually go out and seek saturated fats because they're nutrient dense. Don't look at that as a bad thing. Where like, oh, I'm treating myself if I have a steak that night. No, you're actually helping your body. You're giving it the nutrients it needs if you go out and have a steak cooked in ghee or cooked in beef tallow. I guess you can even cook it in. You're helping your body. So I think that's an important takeaway that I had listening to you is both of those things are true and are important for us to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's also a good point. Ghee is also a saturated fat. That's what I cook with most of the time. I even put it in my coffee in the morning. Ghee, beef tallow, coconut oil. Those are the main three healthy saturated fats that I would recommend. You also have things like, olive oil and avocado oil, which are also great things to find. Those are a different type of fat. Those aren't saturated fat. Those are monounsaturated fat. Not as stable as saturated fat. Some people will tell you to never cook with avocado or olive oil. I'm not one of those people. I'm not too concerned about it. I think it's the seed oils and the polyunsaturated fats are the ones you got to be careful with. But yeah, I guess that's kind of like high level ultimate guide to oils is, avoid the seed oils. And when I say seed oils, I mean soybean oil, sunflower, safflower, rice bran oil, canola, if I didn't say that already. And then much better options, avocado oil, olive oil. Again, you kind of got to be careful with those too, because a lot of them are cut with low quality oils. I have a bunch of information about that on my Instagram page, Clean Kitchen Nutrition, how to basically find and what to look for when buying specific oils. And then ghee, beef tallow, and coconut oil are the good saturated fats.
Yeah. There was one other thing you said too that sparked my memory, that this is a relatively new phenomenon, specifically heart issues existing in Americans has gotten really, really bad. I think it's the number one cause of death at this point is some sort of heart issue. If you look at a chart over time, it's relatively rare to see these in like the 1900 all the way up to the 1960s, 70s. That's when it starts to spike, which is right around the time that seed oils become a lot more prevalent. And one other story that's part of this understanding of why saturated fat has been demonized and weaponized is in 1955, at the time, President Eisenhower was the US president, and he has a heart attack. And that terrifies the entire nation because the sitting president has a heart attack. He's sick. Why? Why did this happen? What caused it? Everyone wants to know these answers. And this is right around the time that Ancel Keys is conducting his 7-country studies. And he has an answer. And Americans are looking for an answer. And they don't necessarily they're not looking for the right answer, but they're looking for an answer at this point. He puts his hand up and says, I've got it. I know what to do. And so he becomes really good friends with Eisenhower's direct doctor, who is a man who actually is one of the founders of the American Heart Association. And so they become good friends. Ancel Keys gives his theory on why this is all happening. This doctor buys in. He spreads it to the American Heart Association. And now you've got this huge nonprofit that is spreading the message here. And Americans are looking for this answer. A trustworthy nonprofit, American Heart Association, is giving them answers. And it all fit together. The timing was perfect. It just happened to be that the wrong person, Ancel Keys, was the one giving this message. If there was a different answer, if sugar or seed oils was the answer that was given and that prevailed, we would have been looking at a totally different American history. I doubt that Americans are dying from this much heart issues if that's the answer that's given. So that's an important kind of way to wrap up, I think, this story here.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, I wonder if they found that added sugar was the problem, which probably even wasn't that prevalent during that time, especially like it is now, all the added sugar products. Like,
Mhm.
I literally just made a video at the store. I mentioned the Red 3, but I also made a video of another topic that we just recently talked about, was this new definition of healthy that the FDA recently came out with. And prior to this new definition, they didn't take into account added sugar into whether something was healthy or not. That's why things like cereal, things like bread, and things like yogurts, like filled with a bunch of added sugar, all three of those like are considered healthy. But luckily, that criteria is changing, and now they're taking into account added sugar. And now, if something has a certain amount of added sugar in it, it can't be healthy. It has to, now the new criteria is that a majority of the product has to be coming from real whole foods. It has to be low in added sugar. And then again, this part I don't really completely agree with, but it also has to be low in saturated fat, because they're still kind of, I don't know. They don't, for some reason, the FDA doesn't want to change their mind on that, because they've been telling us for so long that it's terrible and that the seed oils are healthy and specifically heart healthy, like corn oil. It says heart healthy on the package. But it's a step in the right direction. And same thing with what we just talked about, Steak and Shake changing their the oil that they fry their fries in to beef tallow. So I do think a lot of change is coming very, very soon.
Yeah, 100%. The trend is in the right direction is the key piece there.
Yeah.
And speaking of Steak and Shake, there are also some other fast food, I guess you call them fast food restaurants, that are using beef tallow or have been using beef tallow in the past. So let's start to dive into a little bit more of the fast food restaurants that we're seeing, what trends we're seeing, maybe where you're paying more attention.
Okay, so this is interesting. So I used to think, I've seen many videos on social media talking about Buffalo Wild Wings and how their wings are fried in beef tallow. So I always thought, okay, they fry their wings in beef tallow. That's great. It's 100% beef tallow. Awesome. Am I going to eat there? Probably not. But if someone's out and they really need something, if you want to get some plain wings from Buffalo Wild Wings, okay, that's a good recommendation. I can recommend something at a restaurant that's in cities all over the country. Unfortunately, I cannot recommend that anymore, because recently I've seen a lot of videos on social media. People got access to the specific ingredients in the beef tallow at Buffalo Wild Wings, and unfortunately, the beef tallow also, well, first of all, it says deodorized tallow as well. So I assume this is much more refined and processed than your average, 100% grass-fed real beef tallow. So they use deodorized beef tallow, but unfortunately, there are some additives in there like BHT, which is a very harmful preservative we talked about before. It's in things like Cheez-Its that have been shown to have very, very negative health effects, and citric acid as well, which in my opinion isn't the biggest deal. There's a lot worse things you can be consuming than citric acid, but still, it's not. I would much rather this be 100% beef tallow. So deodorized tallow, it has BHT, it has citric acid, and it also has something called dimethyl polysiloxane. Which I'm not even going to lie to you. I am not sure what that is, but I don't want to be eating that. So that was, to my knowledge, that was one of the few franchise restaurants that was actually using beef tallow. So unfortunately, it's not really something I would recommend anymore. But I am seeing a big shift in just like a lot of the products that I talk about on my Instagram. I'm seeing a shift in a lot of them that are now using beef tallow. For example, masa chips. It's like those corn chips. You've had those, right?
Yeah, those are really good.
Very good, very crunchy, good flavor. It's just organic corn. I think they use Redmond's real salt and then beef tallow. They fry their chips in 100% grass-fed beef tallow, along with another brand called Vandy, which also fries their chips. They make potato chips in beef tallow. And overall, I'm just seeing a lot more brands and products, like specifically protein bars, a lot of them are using beef tallow, where, historically you look at any other protein bar at the grocery store and you're going to see vegetable oils in there. So I am seeing a shift in just the products that I look at on a daily basis. A lot more brands are using beef tallow, which I'm very, very excited about. I'm happy to see where this trend is going.
Yeah. And with Steak and Shake making the announcement, I think more and more companies are going to reconsider whether or not they should use it, considering how much excitement there was around this announcement. One note on the masa chips, they are the perfect nacho chips. They don't flop at all. So if you cook them, put beef on them, put some cheese on top, delicious. Highly recommend. Perfect nacho chips.
Oh, I haven't used that yet.
Yes.
I haven't made nachos with them.
Yeah, those are delicious. So the other area with beef tallow that I'm seeing more and more of is actually using beef tallow for skincare. This is something completely new to me. And so we pulled together a few myths that we're seeing around beef tallow, because I think there is some contention here about whether or not you should actually be using beef tallow for skincare. So we're going to go through the myths, and Kyle's going to break down why or why not they are true. All right. You ready, Kyle?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So the first one, which is the most common one, is that beef tallow will actually clog your pores and cause acne. Is that true or not?
So I hear this a lot, and I see so many, I guess, like dermatologists and other people that are debunking the fact that, or at least they're trying to debunk the fact that beef tallow is not good for our skin. But beef tallow closely resembles human sebum, allowing it to absorb much easily into the skin. And contrary to what people are saying, it actually does not block our pores. Now, I'm not saying that beef tallow is going to fix everything and everyone should be doing this, but it's absolutely something to experiment with and see if it works for you.
Yeah, test it out. This is a good thing to test out. Do you need to get like specific beef tallow for skincare to do this, or can you just get beef tallow off the shelf?
You can get just regular beef tallow. Yeah, if you go to the grocery store, I would recommend looking for 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Make sure there's no additives in there, like we just talked about at Buffalo Wild Wings. But yeah, you can just use regular beef tallow. There are obviously companies that make beef tallow specific for skincare, and there may be some sort of process that maybe makes it a little bit softer or a little bit easier to absorb into the skin. So I'd say ideally, maybe try to go for an actual skincare company that is using beef tallow. But you can absolutely just grab some 100% grass-fed beef tallow off the grocery store shelves and throw that on your face or any part of your skin for that matter, and you'll be good to go.
All right. Especially with it being cold right now, people are looking for some moisturizer. So check out some beef tallow out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Myth number 2, or fact number 2, potentially. This one, I can get behind this a little bit, which is that tallow smells bad and makes my skin greasy. I've never used it, but I could easily wrap my head around why I might smell like beef after I put it on my skin.
Yeah. It's funny because I've used a few different brands of beef tallow. Some of them you can smell. Some of them you can smell. And they have a beef scent, absolutely. But some of them are almost like unflavored or unscented. Like you don't smell anything. And I have used beef tallow on my skin before, specifically from skincare brands. And the few that I've used, it actually does not have any sort of scent to it. And even if there is, maybe it's like a little bit when you first put it on, but it's not like you smell like beef all day. It quickly, that smell quickly dissipates. So again, this is, I could see concern for this, but there's also a bunch of skincare brands that will add like specific essential oils or other things like that, that cover up the beef smell if you are concerned about that.
Got it. Okay. So you got to search a little bit maybe for the right one for you. Test out a few, see what works best.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Myth or fact number 3 here is that really natural skincare is kind of outdated. Like using beef tallow, we've got better science than that. And you should just use more modern skincare products. What do you say to that?
Oh man. I mean, you can go in any store and walk down the skincare aisle, with all the face wash and the moisturizers and everything like that. 99% of those products are going to have very harmful chemicals. A lot of them almost all of them probably use fragrance, which can contain up to hundreds of synthetic chemicals. It's actually very similar to like natural flavors. I always say like fragrance is the natural flavors of the cosmetic and personal care brand or personal care industry. So you got to be careful with that. Oh, there's also just so many other ingredients in personal care products that are endocrine disruptors, meaning it disrupts our hormones. Whatever you're putting on your skin is getting into your body, and it can absolutely mess up your hormones amongst many, many other things. So it's the same philosophy and same principle that I follow when recommending and eating food. It's the less ingredients, the better. Look for the real ingredients that you recognize, that you can pronounce, that you know what they are. I say that for food, and I also say the same thing for skincare products. The skincare industry and the personal care industry, it is less regulated than the food industry. Yeah. And I mean, red number 3 being a perfect example of this. It was just banned by the FDA. And it's been in our food for, I don't know, the last 40, 50, 60 years, whenever it was invented. But now it's like, oh no, it's bad. It causes cancer. So, yeah, you gotta be careful with these skincare products. It's quite scary.
Yeah, this can be a scary topic. And if you don't know where to start, our sister, Clean Living Carly, follow her on Instagram, does all of this. Just like Kyle talks all about how to read ingredients on food, she talks about how to understand ingredients in personal care products. So that is the expert on this, definitely better than either of us in this area. So reach out to her. But the takeaway here, beef tallow is much better. Doesn't have all of those ingredients that exist in modern skincare.
Yeah. And I also know there was something that went on with Procter and Gamble. They hired someone, or they hired someone to basically vilify natural skincare and say that beef tallow is bad for our skin. When, again, not the case. Just look at how natural it is, and again, look at those the vitamins in them, the fat soluble vitamins like A, D, and K, like that. Like our bodies love that, and our bodies absorb that, and our bodies utilize those vitamins that are in the beef tallow.
Yeah, skin is the body's largest organ, and it absorbs everything you put on it.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned this too, but yes, it's great as a moisturizer, but it can also be used as like body lotion. I know a lot of people, actually, the chapstick that I use is made mostly of beef tallow. So it's actually, it's great for that as well. Any dry skin you have, eczema, it can also be great for acne. And again, like this isn't like going to cure everything. I would recommend starting with your diet first too. Like that's like the most important thing. And then, start using some of these natural products, because some of the personal care products you are using that you maybe think is helping, or you're hoping is going to help, it may actually be doing more harm than good.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely something to be aware of. And yeah, that's a good point. Beef tallow, a lot of functionality there. Test it out on different things. Yeah. All right. Our last fact or myth with beef tallow is that commonly people say, oh, I don't want to use beef tallow. I can't store it for a long time. It's going to only last a quick time. I'm going to have to throw it away. So I'm not going to use it. Is that true?
No, not at all. No, beef tallow, as long as you're storing it in like a cool, dark place, it really doesn't matter. Or it's going to last a while. It'll last, years, at least like 3 years before it goes bad. And I don't even know if it will go bad, but yeah, I wouldn't, that would not be one of my concerns.
Okay. So those myths have been debunked. So I think try out beef tallow on your skin, try it on your food too, but try it on your skin and see what you think. Well, and definitely let us know in the comments what you think of this. Cause I think this one will be a trend that we see more and more of, is beef tallow being used for skincare.
Yeah. I'm seeing, I've had so many different companies like reach out to me, and I'm just seeing it popped up like on my Instagram feed, all ads about beef tallow and for food and skincare. So yeah, I'm expecting this to be very, very hot in the next few years.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to fast food once again here, because we've been kind of flirting with beef tallow and fast food and the combo that they play together there. So it sounds like Buffalo Wild Wings probably off your list, but
Yeah.
if you're going, you're out on the road, you need to stop somewhere. You see a McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King. Are you stopping there? And if so, what are you getting from those types of places?
If I absolutely have to stop there, I'm only getting one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it is their beef patties.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't know this, but places like McDonald's, I believe McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King, all three of them, right, use 100% beef. At least that's what they claim. I have many people in my DMs and comments telling me otherwise, but they claim it's 100% real beef, and they don't use any seed oils or anything on the grill when they're making these. They just put the beef on the grill naturally. Beef is high in fat, specifically beef fat or beef tallow, like we're just talking about. So you don't even need an oil. You don't even need to put an oil down because of the natural oil and fat that basically comes out of the beef. So they just put it on the grill. They add some salt, they add some pepper, and that's it. 100% beef, salt, pepper. So if I absolutely have to stop, normally it's McDonald's. I can't say I've tried Wendy's or Burger King. For some reason, I just trust McDonald's more, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But yeah, 100% beef patty. And it'll say, it says that on their website, 100% beef patty.
Mm-hmm.
But you were telling me that there's some other words that some fast food restaurants use that makes it seem like it's 100% beef, but maybe it's not.
Yeah. So unless it says 100% beef, avoid it. So if it just says beef patty or it just says hamburger patty, that means it is not even close to 100% beef. That means they're shoving a bunch of additives in there. I think Jack in the Box was unfortunately one where I came across this, another popular fast food restaurant where it says beef patties. And that is not something you want to have. So avoid that. Look for the 100% beef. Like Kyle said, the three of the largest chains, McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, 100% beef. Now, Kyle, is that grass-fed beef? Are they getting the highest quality there?
No, definitely not the highest quality.
No.
No, it's not grass-fed or anything like that. But I mean, sometimes you got to do the best you can.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. But you're not eating the bun there. You're avoiding the bun. No. You're avoiding all the toppings.
Even all the toppings. All the
pickles?
Toppings. Yeah, pickles, even the pickles. Even the pickles. If you look at the ingredients on the ingredients of pickles at McDonald's, it's got like 6, 7, 8 ingredients. It's got sometimes they add artificial colors in there. Sometimes they always add like a bunch of weird preservatives. So yeah, no, even the pickles, I think maybe like the onions, if you get raw onions, that's fine. And lettuce, but I don't even risk it. I don't know what I don't know what that's coming into contact with back there. So yeah, I normally just go for the beef patties, and it actually tastes pretty good, I have to say.
Yeah.
And it tastes like real beef.
Yeah.
And I never feel bad after eating it, which makes me think it is in fact real beef.
Yeah.
I never have any stomach problems or anything like that after eating it. The few times that I've done it, I will say the one thing that I do not like at all with the beef is that so I'll say the good news and the bad news. The good news is when you request this and you say you just want the beef and nothing else, they actually they make it like fresh on the spot. So normally you have to wait a few minutes, when they're like, oh, pull up over in this parking spot and wait.
Yeah.
That's because they're cooking it fresh for you right on the spot, because it's not already pre-made with all the toppings and everything. And the cheese, don't buy the cheese. That's another thing. Don't get the cheese.
No.
So it's good. They're making it fresh, which makes it taste actually even better. But they make it fresh, so it's hot, and then they put it in this plastic tray. And I don't like a hot burger going on a plastic tray, because that can potentially be leaching these little microplastic particles into the beef. I like to think it's not, it hasn't been in that container for a long time. Like they're cooking it, they're throwing it in there, and they're bringing it right out to me. So immediately I like to open it up and take it out of that plastic container and either eat it or, I don't know, put it in something else, put it on a napkin or something. But yeah, just something I just thought of.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. So much food though is stored in plastic like that. I'm even thinking just the beef that I get at the grocery store is wrapped in plastic all the time. So
yeah, but it's not that's not being heated. So it's not as bad. But yeah, I mean, hey, listen, you can't be perfect.
Yeah.
You cannot be perfect. So just do the best you can. But yeah, I feel like we talked about this in a previous podcast episode that there was some sort of test with a bunch of fast food products, and it found that a lot of them contain these microplastic particles in them because that's what they're wrapped in.
Yeah.
And they're hot. And they're hot, which is, allowing those microplastics and harmful chemicals to be absorbed by the food even better, basically, which is not a good thing.
Yeah, 100%. But one fast food chain you haven't mentioned yet is Chick-fil-A. But unfortunately, Chick-fil-A, that's a healthy food chain, right?
Oh boy.
Is that not true?
We're getting into this?
Bring it on.
Oh man. Chick-fil-A. I made a video about Chick-fil-A a couple of years ago. One of my most viewed videos. I actually didn't even think it was like I didn't really think anything of it. But people were upset when I told them that the Chick-fil-A sandwich is not healthy. And honestly, like growing up, I don't know about you, but I thought Chick-fil-A as well was like one of the healthiest fast food restaurants.
100%.
I hate to tell you, Kevin, but you've been lied to.
No.
It is one of the worst. Honestly,
No way.
I would consider putting Chick-fil-A like as one of the worst, like worse than a McDonald's.
Why is that?
When you look at the ingredients in the Chick-fil-A sandwich, first of all, it contained 55 ingredients in a Chick-fil-A sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
Something that should be very, very simple, with just chicken. It's breaded, so maybe some eggs and breadcrumbs, some seasoning, some salt and pepper, another garlic powder, onion powder, real foods. You got some pickles and bread. Very simple. Could be very, very simple, but no. Chick-fil-A decides to add all of these different ingredients, all of these added preservatives, all of these vegetable oils, all of these flavor enhancers, natural flavors, maltodextrin, which basically is comes from GMO corn. It just gives it more sweetness. They had MSG, monosodium glutamate, which again basically like tricks your brain into thinking that this food is healthier, or this food tastes better than it actually does. So yeah, Chick-fil-A is one of the worst. And even if you go to Chick-fil-A, and this is what went through my head when I made the video, I was like, okay, the Chick-fil-A sandwich isn't very good, but what about like the grilled chicken nuggets?
Yeah.
That should just be grilled chicken and maybe some seasonings.
Mm-hmm.
Even that contained like 20 something ingredients. Again, these added vegetable oils, these flavor enhancers, these preservatives. So Chick-fil-A, man, oh man, they are one of the worst fast food restaurants you can go to. And I wouldn't even recommend getting anything there besides maybe like they have a little fruit cup. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I could find that I would actually eat there. So Chick-fil-A scratched off my list.
So unlike even McDonald's, where you can at least get the beef patties, they don't even have that option because everything has all of these chemicals in it. Yeah, the MSG is popular. And you're right. People do think of, I do. I think of Chick-fil-A as a healthier alternative.
Why?
We're learning about all this. Why?
Yeah.
It's just it just feels like it. Maybe it's because it's cleaner and it's nicer. I'm like, oh, they probably are using good ingredients. But I will say, whenever I eat at Chick-fil-A, I never leave feeling full. I always feel like I did not get enough food. And I feel like part of that is the MSG. It's like tricking my brain to wanting more. I think I saw a study that they tested rats and they just fed them MSG. And when they did that, they ate 20% more than they normally would because their brains are being tricked into thinking, I need more, I want more, I'm not full, I can keep eating. Yep. And that's what Chick-fil-A does. I mean, McDonald's takes the bad rap for supersize me and making Americans fat, but Chick-fil-A is not helping anyone here.
Yeah, it is deceiving too, because like you said, like it's clean. The employees are so nice. My pleasure.
Oh, man. Employees are incredible.
They're great.
Incredible.
Shout out Chick-fil-A employees. You guys are fantastic. And I think that's why people think it's healthy. Like it's cleaner. It's got this rap that it's like more of an upscale fast food restaurant. You got nice employees. So it's just like it's giving the appearance that it's healthier, but yeah, it's one of the worst. So unfortunately, I would not recommend Chick-fil-A.
No. Okay, we'll cross that one off. So let's hit on some better for you alternatives that you can look for. So one that comes to mind is Chipotle. You talk about Chipotle before. What are is Chipotle good? And what are some others in that category that you'd look for?
Yeah, Chipotle is definitely one of the better, I'll say one of the better fast food restaurants. Like you go in there and for the most part, all of their ingredients are, like single ingredient real foods. Like their chicken is just real chicken and real seasonings. Same with the steak. They do use rice bran oil when cooking a lot of these things, when cooking a lot of the protein, and it's in some of the other toppings that you can put on your bowl or burrito, whatever, tacos, whatever you're getting. So that's the only thing I don't like. The only thing I don't like is that they use rice bran oil. I also think they use sunflower oil in their chips. But besides that, a lot of their, like I said, a lot of their food is just like single ingredient real food. So when you're comparing it to a lot of the fast food restaurants that are out there, Chipotle is absolutely one of the best.
Yeah. Okay. So Chipotle is good. What about like one of the ones I see you talk about a lot more now is either True Food or Sweet Green.
Yeah.
Those are ones. Would you put those ahead of Chipotle?
Yes, I would put those ahead of Chipotle. Those are like the top two restaurants, like chains, franchises that you can get. And they're starting to pop up all over even more and more and more. So I love to see that. But yeah, Sweet Green, they used to use a bunch of seed oils in their products, but they recently changed to avocado oil and olive oil recently. And I didn't even really know about Sweet Green before they changed. But now, obviously, once I know about them, like I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm seeing it pop up everywhere. I'm seeing their stock go up. I'm seeing everyone post about it and talk about it. So from my perspective, it seems like once they made that change, they took off, which I would think a lot of other fast food restaurants are looking at and hopefully copying very, very soon. But yeah, Sweet Green is great. They make these different bowls. And like I said, avocado and olive oil in all of their products, except for a couple of the condiments that they use. There is, I believe, sunflower oil in a few of them. So just go on their website but before you go eat there and just ensure you're getting one that's seed oil free. But for the most part, with all of the meat and all of the toppings that aren't the sauces, they're all good to go, made with avocado and olive oil.
Okay. So if we're doing a quick recap on fast food, at the bottom, it's Chick-fil-A, and then 99% of the things at every other fast food restaurant outside of McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King, 100% beef. That would be in a tier slightly above that, but everything else is in one. Then if you go up a tier, you're looking at like the Chipotles of the world, where pretty good, single ingredient for the most part. And then above that is like as best as you can be is the True Foods, is the Sweet Greens there, where no seed oils, they're advertising that. But no matter what you're getting, it sounds like you still have to look at the ingredients at any of these restaurants to really understand what it is that you're putting in your body, just like you do at the grocery store. So many people are now looking at the nutrition label and understanding what ingredients are in there. You can do the same thing for all of these restaurants. All of it is public information, which is fantastic. Doing research for this podcast, it was amazing to look at Subway's ingredients, to look at Wendy's ingredients, to look at Panera's ingredients, and to see what they're using. And it's all free. It's all out there. So do that research.
Yeah, and I feel like that used to not be the case, right? Like they used to not be so transparent about ingredients. I know, like even a couple of years ago when I would try to find fast food ingredients, like it was difficult to find. So it's good to see that that's being more transparent. And then, I'll just hit on True Food real quick. That that's not necessarily a fast food restaurant, but it's like a sit down restaurant, waiters, waitresses, that sort of thing, but all seed oil free, all grass fed meat, pasture raised chicken, eggs, gluten-free options, like really like that's like the restaurant to go to. And again, those are popping up more and more. So if you have a True Food kitchen near you, highly recommend checking it out and going.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. That is our fast food roundup there. I think we crushed that. What about dessert? Kyle, do you have anything
dessert
for me this week?
I was, you know what? I was laying in bed last night thinking about this, anticipating this, and I thought of something, and now I'm having a blank. So I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. You think about it. Mine is actually a takeaway from all of this research is that the impact that one person can have is underrated. Specifically, Ancel Keys. Like obviously his research was bad, but he believed in it. I believe that he believed in it. He done research. He made his network. He talked to the right people, and he influenced our food system for almost 100 years. Yeah. And so when you're thinking about like you being one person, you're like, oh, I can't change that. Whether it's something small at your company, whether it's something big, like changing the entire American food group, you can do a lot as one person. And if you start to work with other people, then you can do even more. So I think that was my biggest takeaway is like, don't underestimate what impact one person can have. You included, like everyone listening to this podcast, you can do a lot. So I think that's awesome.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. I was thinking about that as we were doing this research.
Wow. That's inspiring.
Yeah. You feel it?
Yeah, I definitely feel that. Yeah. Man, I literally was laying in bed last night thinking about this, and I had a good one. I came up with a good one, and now it's not coming back to me. It'll probably come back to me later in the day. But I just thought of another one, and so if you follow me on Instagram, I just posted this on my story yesterday. I was at this little mini retreat here in Florida this past weekend, with a bunch of the guys that I've met in this area, and then some on the other side of Florida, and then some even across the country. But we had this mini retreat, and there was something that one of the guys said that really resonated with me, stuck with me, and I realized that I've been trying to put it into practice just in these past few days. And it's something that just allows you to be more present in the moment and less distracted. And it's basically like whatever you're doing throughout the day, just be that. So I'll give you a few examples. So like in the morning when you're making your coffee, don't have your phone in your hand, half making coffee, half scrolling or texting or checking emails or things like that. When you are making your coffee, you are a coffee maker and you are nothing else except for that. And that just allows you to be present in the moment and just, I don't know, that's just been something I've been working on. Just like, I notice my thoughts are everywhere and I'm trying to do a million things, but just like focus on one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. When we're recording this podcast, I am a podcaster and I am doing nothing else except for listening to you and, talking into the mic, listening to you, asking questions, things like that. Like nothing else should be on my mind. When you're eating, this is a perfect example. Like when you're eating, don't have your laptop open in front of you. Don't be scrolling through social media. Don't be responding to text messages. When you are eating, I don't know, you're a food eater. That's what you are. Nothing else. Just focus on that. So I don't know. This is something that I've been doing just the past couple of days. And like, I don't know, I've just found that it's brought me more presence and just allows me to be more in the moment. So if this resonates with you, try it out. Let me know what you think. That's my dessert.
Yeah, I love it. This is something I'm horrible at. I'm always doing something else while like if I'm making coffee, that's my chance to go check my email, check what's going on. Yeah. And so I'm really bad at that. This is something I need to work on. So I like that. Good reminder.
Try it out, report back. And I
love it. All right. Sweet. That's it. That's all we got.
Well, that's going to be it for this episode of the Clean Kitchen Podcast. We appreciate you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple Music. Hope you're enjoying this podcast so far. And many, many more to come. We got guests coming on very, very soon. Feel free to shoot us a DM or anything on social media, on Instagram. If you have any podcast suggestions, topic suggestions. Other than that, we'll see you next week.
I can't wait.
The Clean Kitchen Podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. As always, talk to your doctor or health team first. Thank you for listening to the Clean Kitchen Podcast. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and Chantilly Toison, edited by Jason Siegel and mixed by Mike Frey. If you like this episode, don't forget to share it with your friends, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating. For more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com.